We're going to have some more folks filtering in. No matter how streamlined we make it, we still have people trying to get through registration. My name is Paige Shiplon. I'm the Executive Director of the Georgia Center of Innovation for Logistics, which is an industry-focused component and division of the Department of Economic Development. And it's my pleasure to welcome you here for yet another record-breaking summit. I'm glad to have you. Our first panel today is focused around international logistics. And frankly, this whole day focuses on supply chain and how it's changing. And one of those things that couldn't be further from the truth is that it's definitely becoming more and more of a global industry. Logistics is certainly a complex industry, and again, more and more global every day. And that's part of the reason why you're here, to learn a little bit more about, from the speakers we have from places all over the world. Today's session, as I mentioned, is entitled International Logistics, Partnerships and Possibilities. And if you should have in front of you, they should have given you one at registration, a program. We are trying to dive right into the material after I give you these sort of opening remarks. You'll see their bios and their smiling faces inside the program. You can read about their background and what they do for their organizations and the countries they represent here today. So we won't be going through bios and reading them to you to kick things off. Each of these esteemed individuals represent a different country and region, and Kathy Falls, who I'll introduce in just a second, will explain that in a little bit more. They're going to go through just some highlights, as each one of these speakers could probably fill a whole hour session on their own, and hopefully in the future, in months and weeks to come, we might do that with many of these individuals, so be on the lookout for that in coming months. I could think of no one better to lead this panel than Kathy Falls. Kathy is our Director of International Trade for the Department of Economic Development and responsible for basically anything global that deals with doing business here in the state of Georgia, and responsible for Georgia's 10 global offices and directs all of their activities related to international business. Again, like all of our speakers, you can read about Kathy in your program as well, so I won't belabor by reading her bio because it's long and impressive as well. So let me get out of your way and let you get into the meat of the program here. So let me introduce Kathy Falls.
Thank you. I'd say thank you, Paige. That was very kind. I think we also ought to owe Paige a big thanks. He said this was record attendance, but I don't know if he mentioned to you that there are over 2,000 people registered at the Georgia Logistics Summits. Quite an increase from last year, and Paige and his staff have done a phenomenal job in pulling this whole thing together. So congratulations to Paige. Nobody I really respect more than Paige. I wanted to tell you a little bit about Georgia's international efforts. Paige started mentioning some of that. 2012 for us was a record year, both with exports and with imports, right? In addition to that, over 70 countries have ties to our state with consulates, honorary consulates, trade commission, binational chambers. Many of those organizations handle multiple states from this Georgia location. Additionally, Georgia is home to about 3,000 international facilities. Those companies employ 150,000 Georgians, a little bit more than 150,000 Georgians. So international economic development is incredibly important to our state. With our exports last year of $35.9 billion, I can tell you that our state leads the nation, the entire nation, in the export of poultry, chemical wood pulp, cotton, craft paper and paperboard, carpet, kaolin, peanuts, just to name a few of them. Additionally, our imports increased last year from $67 billion to $72 billion. Again, just a one-year increase, so record year. When we take a look at our exports by continent, this may surprise you. You know what our #1 continent that Georgia companies are selling products to is? Any guesses? Asia. #1 continent, Asia. That's got 35% of our exports, followed by North America, Europe, and then South America. On the import side, our #1 continent is Asia again, followed by Europe. So Europe replaces North America on the import side, then North America, South America. With this panel sitting in front of you, you've got representatives from the majority of the trading continents that are here. From South America, we have Brazil and Colombia. Europe, we've got Sweden, Germany, Netherlands, and France. Asia, we've got Korea and Israel. Free trade agreements play an important part in the trade numbers that I just mentioned. Among these countries represented today, the U.S. already has free trade agreements with Korea, Israel, and Colombia. Last month, President Obama announced that they would be launching a transatlantic free trade agreement with our European partners. The TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, those negotiations are already underway, and I don't know if you saw the news last week that Japan was added as a country for the TPP partnerships. Great news for Georgia, great overall. The fact that Georgia is doing so well, it makes us an envy for a lot of other states. I have to brag for a second and say that Georgia's international efforts didn't just happen just because. There's a whole lot of factors that go into it, but one of those factors has to do with what Paige mentioned, and that's the location of the state's international representatives in 10 strategic markets. Those representatives are there to promote Georgia as a great place for doing business, a site for investment, a great source of quality products and services, a tourism destination. Georgia's commitment to international is not something new. In fact, this year, 2013, marks the 40th anniversary of our office in Japan, the 40th anniversary of representation in Europe. A long time, lots of marketing, lots of activities that go underway. In fact, those offices are going to be in town next week. They come in town once a year, and that happens to be next week, where we're working on plans for reception, seminar, et cetera, for next week. But to give us a broader view of this global perspective, we have nobody other than UPS. Adam Feinberg, president of UPS International Sales, and he's going to come up to the podium and talk to us for a few minutes about this global perspective and what all they're seeing at UPS. Please welcome Adam.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to have the opportunity to open today's summit. And I'd like to begin by congratulating the Georgia Logistics Summit on 5 years of terrific growth and for being such an effective advocate for the importance of logistics and supply chain issues. UPS appreciates the opportunity to be part of a discussion today, and this discussion is critical to not only Georgia, the United States, the other fine countries represented on the panel, but also to the rest of the world. I've been asked to tee up a quick discussion on a tour of global trade. I'm going to do this in 3 parts. I'll begin by giving you some context, then we'll talk a little bit about connections across borders, and then we'll finish up with some of the concerns. In the interest of full disclosure, the prospects for my company are directly tied to the prospects for global trade. And that's because every day, 2% of the world's GDP and about 6% of the U.S. GDP travel through the UPS system. So we have what you might call an inside view in terms of the role of global trade when it comes to the global economy. Now, the global economy will shape any discussion about global trade. And today's global situation can be characterized like the aftermath of a powerful storm. The immediate danger has passed, but the cleanup and the rebuilding must continue. The World Bank says that global GDP will slowly increase from where it is today to about 3.3% by the year 2015. And it's no surprise that the bank also says that the developing economies will lead that growth. They will grow at about 5.5% this year, 5.7 and 5.8 in 2014 and 2015, respectively. And global trade's role will be critical as well. Last year, it grew about 3.5% and should hit as much as 6% this year and 7% by 2015. In terms of the connections across borders, the potential of global trade is propelled by the power of productive global connection. There's connections across borders on issues that are financial, regulatory, supply chain, social, and environmental in nature. The importance of this connection can be illustrated by a changing global marketplace that we all do business in today. For example, in the next 15 years, 1 billion new people will enter the middle class as consumers. That group of folks will bring with them $14 trillion in consuming power. Today, they struggle to get through the day, but as they improve their standard of living and discretionary income begins to grow, they will have the ability to start consuming, to make their day safer, more enjoyable, and more comfortable. There's also a massive transfer in global economic power that is underway. You've all heard about the BRIC countries for many years. I don't think you can still call Brazil and China emerging economies. Now the newer growth leaders are smaller places like Vietnam, Mexico, Nigeria, and many others. It's possible, in fact, that in just 3 years, the emerging markets may overtake the developed markets in terms of purchasing power. Now, the global connection is particularly important and exciting in how it expands the scale of opportunity. Global trade is no longer just the exclusive club for global companies. Thanks to technology, IT, trade agreements that were mentioned earlier, it's never been easier to be an exporter. There's great opportunities for small and medium-sized businesses. But right now, that opportunity is under-leveraged. The reality for U.S. small and medium-sized businesses is that 95% of the world's consumers and 95% of the purchasing power is outside the U.S. Yet, only 1% of the more than 30 million businesses in the U.S. participate in export. And of that 1% that participate, 60% ship to only one other destination. Despite facts like, according to the Small Business Administration, small and medium-sized businesses that participate in export are more productive, hire more people, create more jobs, and are more likely to be solvent over time than their counterparts who do not participate in export. And at UPS, we see that. Our customers that expand to more than one market grow much quicker than those that don't. However, there's also some concerns. Trade has made the world a better and safer place, but it's still held back at times by some of the old fears and the short-sighted habits. The WTO's Pascal Lemay put it well when he said the last thing the world economy needs right now is the threat of rising protectionism. The trade outlook, when we look ahead, reveals a mix of encouraging steps, yet some continued risks. There's many positives. Most observers see a new sense of urgency and excitement about the long-sought-after transatlantic trade agreement, slow European economy and the slow U.S. economy. Also, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the U.S. and now 11 other nations. If they can bring that to closure, this agreement could serve as the template for trade rules for years to come. Progress, however, is often offset by some worrisome threats. Seeing an increase in protectionism and trade action measures around the world has risen over the last 3 years as measured by the Global Trade Alert. Some people argue that free trade is stuck in neutral because the G20 countries are slowing progress by exploiting WTO loopholes that still exist. And many of you may be familiar with the Buy American philosophy. Well, studies have shown that if we were to do that and other countries were to retaliate and stop buying U.S. exported goods, that could cost the U.S. as many as a couple of 100,000 jobs in our economy. In conclusion, that's a very quick, high-level tour of the dynamic and fast-changing world of global trade. We cannot allow the benefits of trade to be frustrated by the failings of policy. Trade has and will continue to create a safer and more prosperous world. However, the proven benefits will only come from a realistic vision made real by determined cooperation. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Adam, thank you. Thank you for your kind comments, and thank you for UPS being in Georgia and your investment. I have to say, he told me earlier, he said, UPS will end my part of the presentation on time. UPS is always on time, and he did just that. So I have to say, I appreciate that. All right, now we're going to get into our country presentations, and we're going to start with the Netherlands. Just to paint this into perspective, Georgia's export to Europe, among the European countries, the Netherlands ranks 4th in exports and 4th in imports. Not only is it a good trading partner for Georgia, but it's also a very important investor nation, as it ranks 4th in the number of jobs created from European numbers of jobs created for investors, with nearly 13,000 Georgians employed. Some of those companies include Azo, Bluebird Body Company, Heineken, JBC, and Philips Electric. So to give us a very brief overview of this market, we have Arb Kervis, Area Director of Netherlands Foreign Investment Agency in Atlanta. So come on up.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I was asked to tell you a little bit about the Netherlands. I think we're the smallest country in this group here. The Netherlands really is as Kathy already said, it's a trading country. We're not really the largest market of Europe, obviously, but it's one of the largest trading countries in the world. In fact, number 4 for Georgia, but we're the number 1 trading partner of the U.S. Number 3 for import, and the U.S. is the largest investor in Europe. The Netherlands is the largest location where U.S. companies invest in Europe. Obviously, this conference is about logistics. So I'll talk a little bit about the Netherlands as a logistics hub. As I said, a trading country, so we're all about logistics. What's interesting actually is that Georgia and the Netherlands sort of sell themselves in the same way. Georgia tends to like to call itself a gateway to the rest of the US, at least to the southeast. The Netherlands does the same. We're saying that we're a gateway to Europe. A lot of goods come into the Netherlands and go elsewhere. Part of that has to do with our infrastructure, of course. Many companies actually use others to do their logistics for them, as it says there. There's a lot of outsourcing opportunities. I think it's about 60% of all US companies that have logistics operations in Europe do it in the Netherlands, and over 75% of those actually outsource to the likes of UPS and many smaller companies as well. Another important reason for companies interested in the Netherlands as a hub for Europe are its fiscal and financial benefits, also for logistics operations, and I'll talk about that a little later. Some of the infrastructural elements, as most of you know, Rotterdam is still the largest port outside Asia. Huge container port and a very important access point for anywhere in Europe. Amsterdam is, together with Frankfurt in Germany and Heathrow in London, one of the 3 largest cargo airports. Actually, one of the big cargo companies it has its headquarters here. KLM, Air France Cargo, moved from Minneapolis some years ago. I already mentioned the logistics infrastructure and the network of logistics service providers. What's interesting is because there's so many logistics service providers, there's sort of a healthy competition between them, so prices can be quite competitive. We're, again, because we're a trading country, it's a very international oriented, very multilingual country. So it's a hub for Europe. Some of the companies that have established operations in the Netherlands, as I said, mostly for Europe. UPS, obviously, Spanx, one of the Atlanta hits, I guess. Big Green Egg, if you don't have one, buy one. And then you all know these companies, I suppose. They're from large to small. I work for the Netherlands Foreign Investment Agency, so we assist US companies that have an interest in expanding into Europe. And I'm also a board member of the chamber, so if there's any questions later on, please feel free.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you, Art. All right, next up is Brazil. I'm sorry that we don't have more time for each one of these countries because, as you can tell, there's so much information. But the one visual that keeps in my mind about Brazil that we don't have up here is the size of that market. If you were able to take the map of Brazil and turn it on its side, you could place it just about on the continental U.S. I mean, it's quite a visual impact there. So you look at a market of about 200 million consumers. Our exports to Brazil have increased over a 6-year period about 105%. On the import side, over 5 years, that increase is about 38%. Lots going on. Every time I'm around town and there's a Brazilian event, the person you see is Lucia Jennings. So she is here representing the Brazilian American Chamber of Commerce of the Southeast, and she's going to give us an overview of the market.
Well, thank you very much, Kathy. And I'm delighted to be here. Today we speak with you about Brazil, one of the BRIC countries, considered the 5th largest economy of the world and the largest in Latin America. Brazil has a potential to grow due to its exports, which in order to do that, there are lots of things that we need to take into consideration, which to me, one of the most important ones is the fact that there is a cost of doing business in Brazil. And logistics and infrastructure, they play a very important role in how we're going to be able to grow our exports. As Kathy mentioned, the country is with a population of 193 million people, and there are consumers today that belong to the class C, which is our middle class. So there is a huge potential for growth in what they consume. So lots of companies are getting into Brazil to fulfill the needs of this market. Also, our classes A and B have grown about 80% in the last 10 years, and that's also another huge potential for luxury items. The Great Recession that we had in 2008 certainly has slowed the Brazilian economy, but has not stopped it. So what we're looking at is a relative soft growth, but a steady growth that will be important for our sustainability. Since 2011, the Brazilian government has adopted some monetary, fiscal, and exchange rate policy measures and aiming to increase the competitiveness of domestic production without abandoning the inflation, since that's something that has affected Brazil in the past. And also, this has given a lot of more advantages for companies in Brazil to look at exports. When we talk about logistics infrastructure, as you can imagine, companies that have now in its policy to grow its exports, if we don't have in Brazil at this moment railroads that are located in areas where products are being produced and ready to be exported, or better say, the roads and railroads are not close to the ports in which we need to send the products overseas. So with that in mind, there is a program right now that our government is putting together for raising investments in Brazil at around $235 billion in the coming years to bring more infrastructure in the logistics area. Just in roads, it is estimated that there is, in this project, that we will invest at about $21 billion, in railways at about $46 billion, in ports about $27 billion, in a total of $235 billion in the next few years. For the World Cup and Olympics, we also have some very opportunities for investments in the building of stadiums, which is pretty much for the World Cup. Most of the stadiums have already become in about 80 to 90% of its completion, but we still have opportunities for more stadiums and more facilities to be built for the Olympics, which is in 2016. There is a need also for some other civil infrastructure that is needed in order to support investments for the World Cup and Olympics. And this has to do with security and health. Hotels, there is a huge need for hotels to accommodate the folks that are going to be visiting Brazil during the World Cup and Olympics. The last big opportunity for Brazil today is the oil and gas. In the first part of 2008, Petrobras, which is the Brazilian state company, discovered oil in the pre-salt layer of the geological level of the salt. And this is at about 6 kilometers under, below the water level. So this project is becoming a reality for Brazil. It is expected that by 2030, Brazil will become the 6th largest producer of oil in the world. So the major events that I mentioned here in the opportunities for investment in bridges, roads, highways, railways, ports, airports. So it seems like that everything needs to be built. The Brazil economy grew so fast that we could not accompany the same progress with infrastructure. So now we are saying, yeah, we need to raise some more funds from the private sector and become more efficient in developing infrastructure in order to grow through our exports. Tips for doing business in Brazil, I think is very important. The Custo Brasil, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. One certainly is the high logistic costs, because if you have your product in the central part of Brazil and you wanted to move all the way to Port of Santos, you may not have the right transportation because of the roads, railroads, and all the other mode of transportation that I explained. We do have a very complicated tax system, and this is an old tax system and is constantly being revived and introduced. And one of the things that I have heard from folks that wanted to do business with Brazil is that when there is a change in the tax code, is retroactive. So what it means is that it doesn't move forward, because you have to go backwards and then adjust your tax the way you were paying in order now to be able to take advantage of the new tax. This is one of the things that it's a disadvantage for Brazil, because when you look at the Brazilian tax system, a product can be taxed up to 36%. Government regulations, yes, there is a lot of changes going on, not enough, as we can say. In order to be competitive, in order to grow, we definitely need to focus on regulations, not only domestically, but also in trade barriers. There, it's some of the opportunities that we have in Brazil is to decrease the trade barriers and build more alliances so we can find bigger and larger partners. There is a geographic challenge, as you can imagine how Kathy mentioned, the size of the country. If you put one country, the U.S. and Brazil together, you're going to see how large is the country. And we have areas that are today producing, we are second in the production of soybeans in the middle of Brazil, like I mentioned before. To get this product out to the port to be exported, it takes a lot of challenges in supply chain and logistics. And then there is that business culture of jeitinho. Because of so much red tape, they're going to have to find somebody that is going to help you walk through this red tape in order to be able to establish your business and develop your company in Brazil. It takes about 6 months to open a company in Brazil today, which is not, comparing to other countries like here in the U.S., in 15 minutes you build one. Language barriers, certainly you need to speak Portuguese in order to do business in Brazil. Thank you.
Lucia, thank you. It's a good presentation. Thank you very much.
They should have given the time based on the size of the country.
I am so sorry. Let me ask you to do a favor. If you have an empty seat next to you, raise your hand. We have folks lined up all along the wall there. Guys, see these seats? You don't have to stand up. You're welcome to come sit if you'd like some seats. Thank you. And I should mention that these presentations, I think Paige is going to have them on the website, so the slides that we don't get to and all this information, well, are those up today or are they up tomorrow, Ben?
That should be up probably next 3 days or so.
And within the next 3 days, all these slides will be on the website, so you'll be able to pull that up, all right? All right, much better on seats? All right, next up is France. Taking a look at world rankings based on GDP. France ranks as the world's 9th largest economy based on GDP. It's a leading importer and a leading investor nation for our state. In fact, if you take a look at all 50 states that are buying products from France, Georgia ranks as the 8th largest state in dollar value of imports, 8 among the 50. We've got a very strong investment community as well, very strong active community with France. So please join me in welcoming Pascal Goutex to the podium. He is a board member of the French-American Chamber of Commerce, and he develops sales between France and the U.S. for C.H. Robinson. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. So one thing before I get started, France is not only about good wine and good cheese, okay? So just wanted to make that clear. We are also a country that manufactures and that does plenty of other things. One of the great things about France is tourism. As you probably know, it's one of the top destinations around the world for tourists. Every year we have millions of them coming to Paris, but also to the rest of the country. We are very good into what we call the prestige, which encompasses wine, spirits, and beauty products such as cosmetics and so forth, high-end clothing. Aerospace is one of the top industries for us. I don't know if some of you recently heard, but we had last week the chairman of Airbus Industries in Atlanta, who came to speak about the very soon opening of an assembly plant in Mobile, Alabama. Now, this is in Alabama, it's not in Georgia, of course, but it's going to have an impact on Georgia, definitely, because it's going to attract a lot of business. They're starting the construction of the plant in April. It should take about a year to finish. They should start assembling those A320 series as of then. And a lot of business are already starting to establish themselves in the Southeast and especially in the Atlanta area. Some of company names here, as you can see, Zodiac Aerospace is here, headquartered in Atlanta, for instance, Eurocopters in Alabama. So a lot of synergies between France and the US, and especially that region of the US in that particular industry. Health, pharmaceutical, biotechnology. I don't know, some of you may know as well, but for the past 3 years we've had a big event in Atlanta named France Atlanta. France Atlanta has generated a massive amount of exchanges between the city of Atlanta, the state of Georgia, and the country of France, especially focused on these types of industries. There are plenty of panels that talk about these industries, and there's one coming up in 2013. It's going to happen in October and November of this year. Just a few information about the logistics infrastructure in France. We have one major airport, which is Charles de Gaulle, outside of Paris, and two ports, Le Havre on the northwest and Fos-sur-Mer or Marseille in the southeast in the Mediterranean. As you can see, the airport of Paris is the hub for many airlines, and no offense, UPS, I'm sorry, but the FedEx is very strong there. So maybe a hint for you, I don't know. We can talk later. But, so it's a very, very busy airport. As you can see, I'm not going to go through all these numbers. You can see them in the booklet that you have in front of you. The port of Le Havre is one of the top ports in Western Europe, behind Rotterdam, which is the busiest, but one of the busiest ports of entry into the European market and also of exit into the US market, for instance. The port of Fos is mainly focused on the African countries or Mediterranean countries and also on bulk, transport of bulk cargo. Tips for doing business in France, there are many ones. You can see them over here. France, along with other countries such as the Netherlands and Belgium, try to attract international businesses to expand their presence on this continent, the European continent. We have a lot of possibilities to host your company, to offer warehousing and distribution services, and basically what needs to be done prior is to make some research about the way you want to do it, which channel of distribution for your product, which are the partners you want to find, if it's going to be an agent or if you want to open a subsidiary, etc., etc. The best way really to do so is to reach out to those organizations that are here in the US. I'm representing one of them, the French-American Chamber of Commerce. We have a chapter here in Atlanta. We have many ones in the US. We also have a French embassy in Washington, but we also have a French consulate down here that work along with UbiFrance. UbiFrance is an organization that work along with the French government and that enables French companies to penetrate the US market. There's also another organization, an Invest in France agency, that helps American companies to penetrate the European market and France market as well. So please, when you're starting to look into dealing with France, for instance, reach out to these organizations, reach out to me, of course. You'll have my contact information at the end, and I'll be happy to help you out on that end. These are just a few facts about areas of interest between the two countries, between France, and the southeast of the United States. Just a few numbers. Again, I'm not going to go through that. I don't want to take too much of your time. You can always ask questions after that or read through it, but voila. Thank you. Was that pleasure?
Thank you very much. That's great. All right, next we have Korea. Korea is an incredibly important nation for us. Export market, import market, investor nation. Kia is not the only Korean company here. You read a lot of press about that, but you've got SKC, Samsung, Saekwon, LG, Kuma Tires. You've got Korean Air, and the list goes on and on and on of companies. In fact, the international companies that we've talked about, you can get a list of those online at georgiafax.net if you were interested in seeing some of that information. Our exports to Korea from Georgia over a 6-year period have increased 114%. Right, on the import side, in 5 years, that number is 226%. All right, lots of good opportunities there with Korea. Next week, Hee Jun-shin, the director of our economic development efforts in Korea, will be in town, and she'll be talking about investment opportunities, trade opportunities, a week of training, etc. But to tell us more today about Korea, we are very fortunate to have Hong Jun-koo, who is Senior Manager Foreign Investment with Gale International. She is based in New York, so please give her a strong Southern welcome. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. It's a very honored to be here representing Korea in the international forum. Let me talk about my company a little bit. Gale International started its city-scale development project in Korea more than a decade ago. I'd like to address why Gale International chose Korea for its first international development project and touch on why it remains successful 10 years later. Okay. Korea is an attractive country to do business. It's a dynamic and growing global market. Total GDP of Korea is now $1.2 trillion US. It's the world's 15th largest economy. Amazingly, Korea has progressed from one of the world's poorest nations in 1960s to one of the richest in 2010. How did it happen? First, Korea has favorable government policies promoting domestic and foreign investment. Government agencies like Ministry of Knowledge Economy and trade promotion agencies like KOTRA and KIRA actively support and attract foreign investment. Korea's free economic zones provide tax benefits, financial assistance, and other incentives for foreign investment. As a result, the World Bank has listed Korea as the 8th easiest place to do business in 2012. Second, Korea has a highly educated and skilled workforce. Korea's university enrollment ranks #1 among OECD member countries at 79%. Korea's top industries are represented here in this slide. Let me give you a little bit, sorry. And you want to go back? It's a spoiler. Okay, let me give you some statistics. Korea is the world's 5th largest automotive producer. When it comes to shipbuilding, Korea's industry is #1 globally with over 50% of the market share. Korea is the 3rd largest steel producer in the world, and Korea also ranks at top in the smartphone production. So you already saw it. So you think Samsung Galaxy phone is the #1 product in Korea, and guess what? It is the #1 product in Korea 2012, which is size Gangnam Style. So I don't know how many people have not seen size Gangnam Style on YouTube. Nobody. Okay, there might be some people who have not seen it. There's 1.4 billion people who saw Gangnam Style on YouTube so far. And you may think the Gangnam Style came out of nowhere and became a global phenomenon overnight, but Gangnam Style is actually only one example how the Korean pop entertainment products have rapidly expanded in Asia and the rest of the world in recent years. Okay, let's move on to the subject of free trade. Here you can see where Korea's FTAs are in effect. Currently, Korea has the free trade agreement with 2/3 of the world market. The government of Korea embarked on aggressive strategy to reach free trade agreements with major trading partners in 2000. The most significant of these were Korea-EU FTA and Korea-US FTA. In addition to these major agreements, Korea has FTAs with Peru, Chile, Singapore, India, ASEAN, and EFTA. In additional 19 FTAs are under negotiation, or consideration, most notably a possible bilateral FTA with China and trilateral FTA with China and Japan. With all this effort, Korea has achieved now over $1 trillion in trade. The Korea-US trade relationship has grown significantly over the past decade. In 2012, two-way trade exceeded $100 billion for the first time, making Korea the United States' seventh largest trading partner. Okay, here's another impressive number. Korea is the fifth largest market for U.S. agricultural products, and the U.S. runs a substantial surplus in agricultural trade. This surplus is likely to grow as a result of cross-FTA as Korean tariffs are lowered, as seen in recent increase in U.S. export oranges, walnuts, and almonds. Exports of U.S. private commercial services have also been rising. U.S. service providing firms, including law firms, financial firms, and accounting and tax firms, opened offices and began providing specific service in Korea immediately upon the agreement of cross-FTA. Korea is located at the center of Northeast Asia, so it can rapidly connect cities in the region and the rest of the world. As a hub of airport of Northeast Asia, Incheon International Airport is directly connected to 180 cities in 49 countries. Incheon International Airport ranks number 2 in the world for the cargo volume, with the transshipment accounting for more than 50%. Additionally, Korean ports, including Busan and Incheon Port, located on the global trunk line, directly connected to many ports in China, Japan, and Russia. The Korea-EU FTA and the Korea-US FTA are drawing attention from global manufacturing and distribution companies that want to use Korea's air and seaports as a trunk route. These companies will contribute to turning Korea into a global logistics hub that provides tariff exemptions. Korea has become one of the most competitive countries thanks to substantial investment in infrastructure. Korea has extensive world-class transportation network consisting of international airports, seaports, high-speed domestic railways, and a modern highway system. You can go anywhere in Korea in 6 hours. Let me give you more statistics. Incheon International Airport has won the Best Airport Award in 7 consecutive years by ACI. It also ranks number 1 in duty-free sales at $1.5 billion last year. Let's talk about ICT infrastructure. I have mentioned that Korea tops in the smartphone production. It was possible because Koreans are one of the biggest consumers of ICT products. Korea is a leading country in wireless broadband subscription with 99.3%, doubling the OECD average of 47%. Quite impressive. With the development of the world-class airport, it has become natural to develop an airtropolis surrounding the Incheon International Airport. The Incheon Free Economic Zone plays a very important role in terms of efficiency. The goal of an airtropolis is to create a favorable international business environment that promotes the global trade. As e-business becomes a core of the global competitiveness, the surrounding facilities adjacent to the airport and port play a crucial role in attracting global businesses. Within the Incheon Free Economic Zone, encompassing the Incheon International Airport and Incheon Port, Songdo International Business District, Songdo IBD, is developed to create the international business environment. Gale International, along with its domestic partner POSCO ENC and its public partner Incheon City, made a unique public-private partnership. The city government has invested and developed the infrastructure necessary for an international city, like 7-mile Incheon Bridge, connecting Songdo to the Incheon International Airport, the subway lines connecting to the Seoul metropolitan area. By 2020, the GTX high-speed rail train will connect Songdo to Seoul downtown under 25 minutes. Partnering with the Cisco Systems, we have created a smart, sustainable city that runs on converged connected network. Nearly 50% complete now, Songdo IBD is a pioneer of the sustainable city development and has the highest concentration of the U.S. Green Building Council's LEED certification, with about 40 million square feet of LEED certified space. With this unique partnership and development principle, Songdo IBD is recently named to host the Green Climate Fund Secretary in 2012. Actually, this is the end of my presentation, and thank you very much. If you have further questions, you can contact me or the trading promotion agency like Kira and Kotra. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Let's do the seats one more time. We still have folks that have come in and lined up the back of the room. Seats near you, if you'll raise your hand, so those who are looking for seats can, lots of folks down this way, there's some seats. So if you're tired of standing, you're welcome to come down and find a seat. All right, next is Germany. Germany ranks among our top 5. There are 5 countries that hit top in exports, imports, investment, all 3 of them, and Germany is one. It's the headquarters of the state of Georgia's European operation, going back to representation for the entire European market, going back 40 years. It also is an incredibly important partner for us with the very active German community that's here. So let me introduce Silke Milke, Director, Consulting Services, German American Chamber of Commerce, based here in Atlanta. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy, for the kind introduction, and I would also like to thank Paige one more time for putting this great program together. My name is Silke Mielke. I'm the Director for Consulting Services from the German American Chamber of Commerce. And on the one hand, we are a partially funded organization. We get subsidies from the German Ministry for Economic Affairs, but we also offer consulting services to help German companies with their US market expansion. For today, I was asked to provide you with a few more details about how to do business in Germany, business opportunities for probably smaller and medium-sized American companies. On the one hand, Germany is also in the heart of Europe. We've heard that from the Netherlands, we've heard that from France. When it comes to cheese and wine, I definitely prefer French wine. When it comes to German engineering, I also have a German car. Germany is still the biggest market in the European Union, and especially when it comes to the auto industry, machinery and automation, Germany is also a nation with a lot of growing industries, and even though we're still in the middle of the European financial crisis, the German industry is still doing very great and successful. Logistics and infrastructure, Germany has very competitive airport, road, railroad infrastructure. Germany is also well known for world-class infrastructure. The port of Hamburg, for example, is the second biggest port in Europe. The port of Bremerhaven, on the other hand, is the largest car port for vehicle traffic. And when it comes to the transportation modes, we just heard that from Korea. In Germany, if you want to travel from the north to the south, it might take you up to 7 or 8 hours, and that makes it also very challenging. On the other hand, if I speak with our German companies who are interested in entering the US market, we just had an auto delegation here in town last week with 10 smaller and medium-sized companies, and we sent them to the auto regions, to Georgia. We had meetings at the Kia facility, for example. We also sent them to Alabama, to Tennessee, to South Carolina, and a lot of German companies really complained about the travel itineraries because, especially from Tuscaloosa, for example, to go back to Spartanburg, it sometimes took them 6 hours, then with the time difference, so that made it very challenging for our German guests here. Tips for doing business in Germany. I mean, on the one hand, of course, you have to understand the German business culture. Germans tend to be very direct. Whenever one of my colleagues from the American teams says to me, I might have a concern, then I'm thinking, okay, now it's getting serious, we really have a problem. That's probably more the German way. On the other hand, for American companies, it's probably also very important to be aware of all the German regulations. If I speak with my German clients, everyone complains about customs and border protection, CT-PAD regulation, importing regulations. FDA is also a huge topic within the food or medical industry. But on the other hand, if you look at the German regulations, it's not getting easier. Also with the tax system, and that's also something a lot of American companies have to learn first to find out more about the German law regulations and the German tax system. On the other hand, and that makes it very interesting to do business in Germany, The German economy is based on the middle class. We call it the Mittelstand, the smaller and medium-sized companies. They're really the backbone for the German economy, and that's why we from the German-American Chamber of Commerce always try to promote these bilateral relationships, especially with a focus on smaller and medium-sized companies. One more comment from my side. I just mentioned we had an auto delegation in town last week, and it's always very interesting to see how do German companies present their products and services and how do American companies present their services. And German engineering communicates through Excel, US engineers through PowerPoint. That's what we really see a lot, especially in local seminars. And last week, for example, when we had our companies here in town, they spoke about technical specifications, they spoke about technical details, and the American plant manager just asked them, where's your unique selling point? Who are your reference clients? And why should we work with you? And on the other hand, if an American company wants to do business in Germany, you also have to be aware of these intercultural challenges. Areas of interest, I already spoke about the automotive industry. Engineering, machinery, and automation is also a very interesting area. Chemicals, information technologies, and I also tried to show you one more picture about the size. I mean, the US is 20 times bigger than Germany. On the other hand, if you have any questions about how to do business in Germany, I would be more than happy to introduce you to our partner organization. They're called Germany Trade and Invest. And like here in the US, we have one funded agency on a federal level, but we also have different economic development departments for each state in Germany. And if you have any questions or if you need more information about how to do business in Germany, I can gladly answer your questions and provide you with more information. Thank you very much.